They lie at the bottom of the deep blue sea. They give life and have taken it away. The underwater volcanoes of the west coast of Italy have devastated Europe before and remain a mortal danger to millions. But the magma below the land and sea here have also turned the coastline and its lands into an earthly paradise for agriculture, fishing and tourism going back nearly 3,000 years. The most dangerous volcanoes in Europe are hidden. The Phlegraean Fields caldera and the underwater volcanoes of the Tyrrhenian Sea, including Europe's largest, the massive Mount Marsili, have given and taken life for millions of years. Even in the blackest undersea depths, the volcano quietly vents heat and breeds life.
There's no light, of course, at 1,000 meters. Over 500 meters deep, it's just completely pitch black dark. But the hydrothermal vents are rich in life, from bacteria to higher order organisms, all living on the chemistry of these hot fluids.
Tube worms breed on the white bacteria that colonize the sulfurous undersea vents, while the minerals that these underwater volcanoes release into the sea foster a rich marine ecosystem that normally wouldn't survive so deep. The mysterious hidden volcanoes of Italy are generous to the beings that live on and around them, but remain a dormant danger too. Close to the town of Pozzuoli, the sulfur fumes of the Phlegraean Fields' Sulfatara crater were once thought to be the door to hell. They are directly connected to a huge lava field, 8,000 meters below the Earth's crust. This massive underground lake of lava causes the land to swell and shake, rise and fall, a phenomenon called Bradiseism that 40 years ago slowly killed the city of Pozzuoli.
We have to learn to live with Bradiseism if we want to live in this wonderful land. It's a lifestyle choice, and we have to defy nature.
In the 1980s, there were a series of earthquake tremors that lasted all night long, and we stayed here. We weren't about to go anywhere.
Rione Terra was completely empty. It had been abandoned. When we began excavating here, it was a ghost city.
The city of Naples extends 117 square kilometers northwest of the volcano Vesuvius and borders the tiny port city of Pozzuoli, which was devastated by earthquakes in the 1980s. Only a dozen kilometers north of one of the most famous volcanoes in the world lies one of the most dangerous. At 12 kilometers in diameter, the Phlegraean, or burning fields as the Romans called the area, is one of the largest calderas in the world, a mystical world of fire and water. This supervolcano has erupted several times over the millennia. Today, the Earth's crust is swelling here, warranting special attention by the Italian Institute of Geophysics and Volcanology. An eruption here could be cataclysmic.
The
Phlegraean Fields caldera is an area with a radius of 6 kilometers, more or less centered on the city of Pozzuoli. But the real center of the caldera is actually about 2 kilometers out to sea, because about 60% of the caldera is below sea level. Calderas are formed when the eruptions are so enormous that they empty the magma reservoir and cause a circular or elliptical collapse of the area.
The eruptions of this supervolcano have also blessed the land and sea of the Campania region. Hot springs, strong but light volcanic stone building materials, and amazing soil fertility first attracted the ancient Greeks. The Romans prized Pozzuoli too for its wide, tranquil bay. It became Rome's first commercial port.
Volcanoes have offered and still offer enormous advantages. The most evident is the fertility of soils. Campania used to be called Campania Felix by the Romans, and this was due to the great fertility of the soil, due to the mixing of volcanic materials which became fertile already after a century. Also for the microclimate, for the natural scenery, and above all, and this was particularly appreciated in ancient times, for the harbors, the natural harbors as well as the spores and the mineral and thermal waters.
At Cuma, an ancient Greek acropolis hosted the most famous Sibyl, or prophetess, in Italy. She is said to have foretold the future in a trance-like state. What has become known as the Sibyl's Cave is actually a defensive structure below the Greek acropolis. Cuma stands on the westernmost edge of the massive Phlegraean Fields caldera and looks out toward the island of Ischia, the first Greek settlement in Italy.
As far as we know, the Greeks did not stop in Puglia or Calabria or even Sicily. They came all around southern Italy to land on Ischia. There were still eruptions there in the 8th century before Christ, but they still established a colony there, probably because they viewed it as very favorable due to the natural ports.
All the myths started in the Phlegraean Fields. The door to the underworld, the legend of Aeneas, the legend of Bios, the legend of Hercules, they all started here.
Still today, tourists come to Ischia to enjoy the amazing sulphurous thermal springs. Although Ischia is not technically part of the Phlegraean Fields caldera, but a volcano in its own right, it draws on the same lava lake. Thermalism is one of the advantages of the Phlegraean Fields.
Our activity has been to build everything you see here, because we built it with our own hands. There was no construction company that came here to work. We did it all ourselves, myself, my brother, and a few workers who came to work with us.
Pasquale operates a bathing complex around a hot spring first used by the Romans, indeed probably by the Emperor Nero himself.
The area was famous due to the presence of the Emperor Nero, who spent quite a lot of time at Baia, which was the central hotspot for the Romans.
The Phlegraean Fields waters are alkaline, earthy springs with iodine, bromide, fluoride and lithium. They are known for their anti-inflammatory properties.
We are at the center of the crater of an active volcano. The seawater drops down, finds extremely high temperatures, and comes back up. So it's seawater that is purified by the heat. It comes back up bacteriologically pure. No bacteria can survive these temperatures.
The brothers and their 7 children have built this complex over the years around the amazing natural springs that bubble up from the caldera here, but have avoided the pitfalls of mass tourism due to their location so close to the chaotic city of Naples. There is no hotel, making these springs a well-kept local secret.
Let's say that real tourism hasn't yet spoiled us here. Exclusive tourism was represented by Capri when there were no ferries, or Sorrento. when there were no motorways, or the Cinque Terre, because there is no way to reach them.
Sono le Cinque Terre perché non ci si può arrivare.
It's the places that are hardest to reach that become tourist attractions.
Di attrazione turistica.
The mountains all around are craters formed over the millennia, including the newest volcano, the Monte Nuovo, which emerged over the course of a week in 1538 and today is a nature park.
Questo qua di fronte qua è Monte Nuovo.
This is Monte Nuovo. It was born on September 29th, 1538. We hope to celebrate its 500th birthday soon. A mountain that was born 500 years ago is like it was born yesterday.
But the most active of the craters in the Phlegraean Fields complex is the Sulfatara, where sulfur fumes and vapor sizzle up through the lunar-like landscape at more than 200 degrees. These brick and mortar structures were once used as sweat houses for curing respiratory and skin diseases. The ancients believed this was the gateway to the underworld. Here the earth is hot to the touch, and local farmers sometimes even cook on the rocky hotspots. These volcanic clay pots and geysers of mud and water are produced when water comes in contact with the molten lava underneath, and vapor is pushed through the fragmented rock.
Sappiamo che la zona di alimentazione più importante di tutto.
We know that one of the most important sources feeding all the volcanoes of the Campania region, so that means Vesuvius, the Phlegraean Fields, and Ischia, the island of Ischia, is a magma reservoir, a kind of thin lens-shaped field that is about between 8 and 10 kilometers deep, slightly higher under the Phlegraean Fields, and slightly deeper under Vesuvius. So this magma reservoir is the most important source of lava.
Rappresenta la zona di alimentazione superficiale più importante.
Here, where the Earth's crust is twisting under the pressure from the African continental plate, magma has been bubbling up to the surface and making volcanoes for millennia. It has created a red zone of dormant but deadly hotspots: the Phlegraean Fields, Mount Vesuvius, and the volcanoes of the Tyrrhenian Sea, including Europe's largest, a 3,000-meter-high monster, Mount Marsili. The massive Phlegraean Fields caldera is just the tip of one of the most potentially devastating volcanoes in the world. It is the result of the twisting of the Earth's crust where two continental plates meet.
Il vulcanismo tirrenico è legato ad una.
The Tyrrhenian volcanoes are associated with a subduction zone of the Adriatic plate. This area of contact for a long time has not been under compression, but opening up, so both the earthquakes of the Apennines and the volcanoes originate from this opening, as it causes a depression that favors the rise of magma.
Perché praticamente si crea una depressione che favorisce la risalita di magmi.
The Phlegraean Fields were created in 3 geological phases. The first culminated 39,000 years ago in a massive eruption that changed the climate for centuries. To understand the present, experts are using what they know of the past to best prepare for the future.
The largest eruption that ever occurred in Europe, at least since man has walked the earth 39,000 years ago, covered the whole of Campania. Some researchers think that this eruption caused the extinction of Neanderthal man, because Neanderthal man, who coexisted with Homo sapiens, died out about 40,000 years ago.
The second volcanic era ended 15,000 years ago with an eruption that created the crater as we see it today, with the southern rim of the Posillipo Hill extending far out to sea as far as the island of Nisida. Since then, smaller eruptions have pockmarked the caldera with younger volcanoes that make up the Phlegraean Fields complex. This massive but shallow supervolcano lifts and falls with the movement of magma and gas under the surface. This constant rising and falling of the land is called Bradiseism. It creates very specific problems for the people who live on it.
It is now believed that it is not only the magma that is pushing up the land, but also that there is a large mass of water close to the surface that is heated up by the flow of magma, and the pressure of the water is increased with the heating process and swells the earth even further.
The Roman ruins dotted across the Phlegraean Fields, like the columns here at the Temple of Serapis, show the effects of Bradiseism. The signs of sea mollusks on the columns mark where the water level rose to during the Middle Ages. Now the Earth's crust has swollen again, and the temple has risen out of the sea.
In 15 years, between 1969 and 1984, the level of the port of Pozzuoli rose by 3.5 meters, creating enormous problems for the port's quayside, requiring the building of new jetties and so forth.
Dopo la scossa più alta.
After the most powerful earthquake of the 4th of September 1983, the decision was made to evacuate the so-called Zone A that included the old part of the town that overlooked the sea.
In the 1970s and 80s, earthquakes shook Pozzuoli as the Earth's crust swelled. The old town of Rione Terra was evacuated. 40 years later, the new mayor of Pozzuoli, Vincenzo Figliolia, is working hard to restore the evacuated quarter that sits on a scenic promontory jutting out into the bay, in order to give new life to the city.
The whole of the city, most of the city, lives inside this famous caldera, visited by so many scientific researchers from all over the world. This aspect, this emergency that is called Bradiseism, affects the daily life of the people who have chosen to live here. So we are putting together not only solutions that involve civil defense, eventual evacuations, but also involve awakening the people to what it actually means to live in a city with these kinds of problems, which are different from those caused by Vesuvius, different from those caused by Etna.
Che è diversa dall'Etna.
Bringing the ghost town of Rione Terra back to life has exposed a hidden gem of the ancient world. In 1993, funds became available to completely excavate the ancient Roman commercial port town of Puteoli. Lucia Proietti is an archaeologist and was among the first to literally go underground to excavate layer after layer of more than 2,000 years of history.
Imagine, for months we had to crawl underground, stoop over and stay there all day long. It was like that for years. Together with that, there was the damp, the dark, the mold. We all paid the price, with allergies, arthrosis, and different physical problems, that's for sure.
What the archaeologists discovered was quite extraordinary. Unlike the nearby Pompeii that was frozen in time by the ash from Vesuvius, here the many levels of construction of Rome's main port came to life.
Tutto questo settore è stato completamente dimenticato, è stata la nostra fortuna. Questo.
This whole area was forgotten, And it was a stroke of luck, because they built upwards. Because what happens here often is that rather than demolish buildings and rebuild, it's easier to remove all the rubble that is inconvenient, throw it down, and build from that level upwards. That way they built upwards metre after metre. But they allowed us to dig down later and find everything they left.
Walking down the Cardo, the main north-south street in the Roman city, the shops, or taberne, are clearly visible. They have been animated with a display for visitors. One in particular revealed most about the site.
Of the excavated shops, or taberne, this is the most interesting, not only because it was the best preserved, but it also showed all the ancient structural developments. That proved invaluable for us in dating the other shops that were built around it, one after the other.
The recently installed and innovative display shows how this bakery might have worked, with slaves turning the grindstone. Much was discovered about life in ancient Rome from an unlikely source.
You won't believe this, the most incredible place were the drains. You have no idea what we found in them. Life itself. All sorts of things fell into the drains. We found all sorts of things there, from peach kernels, earrings, the cochlea for mixing eyeshadow, belt buckles, coins, ceramics, everything that's part of the daily life of a man and a woman.
And here, in the depths of the ancient city, with different entrances and exits for privacy, is where scholars believe women and slaves may have been kept.
According to other scholars, these were ergastula, rooms for the slaves who were kept down here to sleep. In our opinion, however, due to the position of the structure, that is public, set between two streets with access from the two streets, and also with very similar cell-like rooms, it was probably used for prostitutes.
Puteoli was one of the most beautiful cities of the Roman Republic, and like the Greeks before them, the Romans used this as a commercial port to exchange the ancient world's finest goods. Carved into a promontory of yellow, tough volcanic stone, the view of this vertical city as the ships arrived into port must have been extraordinary.
La città aveva l'aspetto, molto probabilmente, delle città dell'Asia Minore.
It's very probable that the city looked like the cities of Asia Minor. Think of Kos and Lindos. I mean, with tough promontories, levelled out with terraces, with buildings on every terrace, with the white marble temple on the highest terrace, which was the object first noticed from the sea, for those who turned the cape and entered, creating a sense of surprise and marvel, creating a theatrical spectacle. So the impression for those coming in from the sea was surprise at the great beauty.
Chi veniva da mare e chi veniva da fuori era quella di sorpresa per la grande bellezza.
The Romans used the light volcanic stone from here to build everywhere. It is known as yellow tuff, a product of the last super eruption of 15,000 years ago, when the sulfur-based volcanic ash was spread across the region.
The
tuff is the typical product of phreatic magmatic eruption and is created by the mix of magma with water at shallow depth, which generates the very special rock that covers the whole of the Campania region.
This stone also made excellent cement, as it solidified together with limestone when wet, making building faster and the cement lighter. Many Roman monuments, including the Colosseum, owe their longevity to Roman cement. The volcanic salts and minerals that enrich the soil in the Phlegraean Fields also benefit the fishing industry, as the sulfur content in the water enhances the growth of certain algae and plankton on which the fish feed. All along this coast, gases and minerals bubble up into the sea, including here at the fish market in the port of Pozzuoli. Pozzuoli has the 5th largest fish market in Italy and is one of the only ones in which the fishing boats dock at the market to deliver directly onto the stores. As morning breaks over the Phlegraean Fields, the fishermen organize their nets as their catch is hauled into the market. Adolfo Aleotti is the director of the fish market in Pozzuoli. His day begins at 4 a.m. and closes just after dawn.
Buongiorno. 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 Questa è la nostra banchina di sbarco.
This is our quayside. There are still some fishing boats alongside that have finished their offloading operations.
Da qualche ora hanno terminato le loro operazioni di scarico delle merci.
The city of Pozzuoli has its own fishing industry observatory, which monitors the changes in catches and brings together associations of fishing boat owners. Fresh fish is one of the strategic industries of these Phlegraean Fields waters.
Il fatto stesso che è una zona vulcanica, le alghe, il prodotto alimentare.
The fact that it is a volcanic zone means that the algae have a different nutrition that is rich in specific salts and minerals that other areas don't have. And this determines a different nutrition for the marine fauna from others.
E questo determina un'alimentazione per la fauna marina sostanzialmente diversa rispetto ad altre.
The speciality here are blue-backed oily fish caught in the open sea, including sardines, anchovies and mackerel, although other fish are also abundant.
Questo è un prodotto locale.
This is a local product. As you can see, they are oily fish delivered directly from the fishing boats to the wholesale fish market.
Direttamente dai pescherecci al mercato ittico all'ingrosso. A differenza di altri prodotti che
Unlike other products that come from other fishing fleets, this is synonymous with freshness. The shiny skin and the consistency of the fish itself.
è la consistenza del pesce stesso. La parte superiore è azzurra.
The upper part is blue. The local fish are always like this. Fish that come from other fishing fleets, apart from the nutritional characteristics, loses its colour over time and becomes completely grey, so it's another colour altogether.
E quindi diventa completamente grigia ed è un altro prodotto.
All the fish are traced, tracked and labelled on the boat in accordance with EU regulations, and the market is regularly checked by the veterinary service and the Coast Guard for undersized catches.
Se voi notate l'etichettatura di tutti.
As you will notice, the labels on each product are the basis of ensuring the food safety to the final user.
Del consumatore finale. Siamo nell'ordine talvolta anche del 100%.
The price of our fish off the boat is sometimes 100% higher if we compare the fish caught by our fleet and fish sold by other fishing fleets.
Direttamente assunto dalla nostra marineria.
By mid-morning, the fisherman's day is coming to an end. But in the vineyards, situated nearby in the very heart of the Phlegraean Fields caldera, the work is just beginning. Like all volcanoes, the slow dripping of salts and minerals into the soil have made the Phlegraean Fields a particularly fertile area. Some of those wines are being grown on and around the Astroni crater, the heart of which is now a nature reserve and paradise for birds, managed by the World Wildlife Fund. Located on the very outskirts of Naples, The bucolic oasis of the crater offers residents and wildlife a welcome respite from the chaos of the nearby city. One of the youngest craters, with 7 eruptions around 4,000 years ago, lies on the very edge of the Phlegraean Fields, just next to the Agnano crater, known for its racecourse. These craters are also home to ancient vineyards, producing Campi Flegrei DOC wines. More than 20 producers in the Campi Flegrei region have formed a consortium to promote these special volcanic wines. Gerardo Vernazzaro is the president.
We are here in this enormous caldera in which the Astroni crater was formed, which represents the youngest phase. The youth of these volcanic soils generates this, a very light volcanic sand with extremely important mechanical characteristics for the vine. A very fine sand, practically without structure. Extremely fine, almost 100% sand, allows the water to drain without stagnation, giving the vine special characteristics. Especially the grape itself and the resulting wines are refined taste, elegance, strong taste and high level of minerality.
When the Greeks came to what is now known as Italy, they brought with them the vine. And still today, some of these same grape varieties are used to make wine.
So when the first sailors arrived in the Phlegraean Fields from the Aegean Sea, they tried to grow the vine the same way they did in Greece, with a technique known as the basket, so low on the ground. When they tried this technique in the Phlegraean Fields, unfortunately the damp got to the grapes that tended to rot. So they decided to grow the vine at the height of the phalange, or spear of the Greek warrior. This gave them excellent results, and today we speak of Phalangina wine. So the Phalangina wine derives its name from the word phalange, vinum albe phalange, so Phalangina.
Vinum album phalangina e da questo poi l'attuale Phalangina.
However, terracing the sandy land to grow wine is difficult due to the risk of landslides. Once shored up, the terracing exposes the layers of earth created by the millennia of volcanic activity.
Let's say that Phalangina is a very flexible wine. We could call it the Chardonnay of Italy. It grows well nearly everywhere. But we think that its best terrain is on volcanic earth. And if this volcanic earth is close to the sea, so much the better, because it gives the wine that taste of mineral fragrance, freshness, and above all, elegance, that in other terrains it doesn't express.
The area also produces a small amount of red wine, grown only here, the Piedirosso, or red feet wine.
This wine variety is only grown in the province of Naples, on volcanic soil close to the sea, as opposed to the Phalangina wine that is very flexible. The Piedirosso is very rustic and not very flexible, so it works well only on volcanic soils close to the sea. It is mostly grown in the Phlegraean Fields. We could compare it to the Pinot Nero, not due to its taste, but due to the qualities of its tannins. It offers very subtle, elegant tannins. It is a light, agile wine. It is a red wine that can be drunk slightly cool during the summer months.
The Phlegraean Fields, with their rich archaeological heritage, spas, fertile soil and waters, seem to be an earthly paradise. But this Garden of Eden is also a silent yet deadly threat to the local population. The Phlegraean Fields, with their active sulfur geysers and boiling hot springs, were considered the legendary entry to hell, and the area north of Naples was once overlooked by tourists as a mostly industrial zone of massive factories and unattractive housing blocks. But today, city officials in Pozzuoli are renovating their waterfront and harnessing the power of the volcano and its gifts to the land and sea to transform the economy of the region.
Few cities in the world have the sea, the lakes, Lake Averno and Lake Lucrino, have archaeological and natural resources, cultural resources, the first Roman port. During the urban regeneration of this quarter of the city, during the excavation, we brought to light and showed to the world the first Roman port.
Here, residents live not only in the shadow of the volcano, but right inside the caldera of one of the most dangerous supervolcanoes in the world. The locals, however, seem almost immune to the dangers scientists say are associated with living here. The constant rising and falling of the land, the formation of new craters, the massive underground lava lake, the earthquakes, and the potential for cataclysmic eruption.
A city that over so many years has undergone 2 evacuations in 30 years means that in its very DNA, it has a regenerative power and determination to live in this wonderful place.
L'area flegrea è a livello giallo perché c'è...
The Phlegraean Fields are on yellow alert, as there has been a slight rise of the crust that has been going on for a decade. And in the Phlegraean Fields, we have communicated to the mayors of the towns in the red zone what are the earliest signs of an earthquake.
Le prime caratteristiche del terremoto.
Although the hidden supervolcano of the Phlegraean Fields may be one of the most dangerous in the world, nearby lurks an even more hidden threat that still has not been fully explored. It is one of Europe's highest mountains, but its peak is 450 meters under water. It's the undersea volcano of Marsili. Michael Marani is a marine geologist at the Italian National Marine Research Institute who has explored Marsili and the Tyrrhenian Sea volcanoes for decades.
What is unusual is that the volcano is extremely large. It's a 3,000 meter high volcano. It's not a cone, as usually one thinks of volcanoes, but it's a ridge, a long ridge, which is about 60 kilometers long and about 30 kilometers wide. So it's at a huge volume. It reaches 500 meters below the sea surface, and it is active at the moment.
As these amazing underwater images show, scientists are now able to see the surface of the submerged volcanoes in incredible detail, thanks to the use of remotely operated vehicles with mounted cameras and lights. Tiny colonies of tube worms flourish on the white bacteria that have built up around the hydrothermal vents, where hot water shimmers up out of the seabed.
What the hot fluids make possible is a completely alien ecosystem with organisms which are chemiotrophs.
The volcano is host to this unique microcosm of marine life in the blackest and most barren depths of the sea. For scientists, it is further proof that organisms can thrive in even the most hostile conditions.
And it's also considered a possibility of life on other worlds, because we know that there's planets which have water worlds, like planets of Jupiter or Encephalo, or the planets of Saturn.
These amazing and rare pictures of undersea volcanic life were recorded by the ROV Hercules, piloted by skilled technicians aboard the oceanography vessel Nautilus. Here, the vehicle is exploring Palinuro, another volcanic ridge that sits 70 meters below sea level.
Around Marsili is the Aeolian Arc, which is a volcanic arc. Stromboli is probably the most famous island part of this arc. There are 7 or 8 islands, and bordering these islands are the continuation of the volcanic arc in the submerged part. Palinuro is part of it. Now, Palinuro is a 50-kilometer long chain of 8 volcanoes. It has a large caldera surrounded by small cones.
If a rock slide were to occur on any of the underwater volcanoes, the displaced water could create a tidal wave. Depending on the circumstances and the seafloor terrain where the slide occurred, the consequences could be catastrophic. In 2012, the side of the volcanic island of Stromboli, known as Sciara del Fuoco, erupted and caused a landslide. 5 million cubic meters of rock fell into the water, while under the surface, another 15 million cubic meters slipped to the bottom of the sea. A 7-meter-high tsunami swept tens of meters inland, destroying all that lay in its path.
Chiaramente, se ci fossero distacchi molto più importanti.
Clearly, if there were to be landslides that were even larger than the Sciara del Fuoco of Stromboli, or even a collapse of the whole side of the volcano, the tsunami would be of enormous proportions and would involve the whole Mediterranean, including Spain, Africa, Sicily, as well as Italy.
La Sicilia, l'Italia e cose del genere.
The problem with the Mediterranean as a whole, not the Mediterranean, but the Mediterranean as a whole, is that if anything happens, if there's a tsunami warning, I think the longest time that we have is about 20 minutes to react.
È chiaro che un'eruzione di questi vulcani
It is obvious that an eruption of these volcanoes could provoke a tidal wave, the size of which would depend on many factors. In the first place, the size of the eruption. However, we have to say that this fear of Marsili is a little exaggerated, as you can imagine. A volcano that sits 2,000 meters below the sea and quite a long way from the coast is much less dangerous than volcanoes that stand in the middle of densely inhabited cities.
Di vulcani che sorgono all'interno di città densamente abitate.
This animation shows how fast a tsunami caused by a collapsing wall of the Marsili volcano would travel before impacting the shorelines of southern Italy. In just a few minutes, the seafronts of big cities such as Salerno and Palermo would be submerged by a tidal wave, possibly of cataclysmic proportions. Echo-sonar of the sea floor has allowed the INGV to put together a picture of the mountains, peaks and valleys to establish the level of threat to the population on the shores of Italy. Energy companies are also probing volcanic areas throughout the Mediterranean to consider the controversial option of tapping into their geothermal resources one day. As tourists sail between Naples and Palermo, they unknowingly pass over Europe's highest volcano, venting its heat directly into the cold depths of the Mediterranean Sea. And in forgotten quarters of the suburbs north of Naples, another hidden volcano releases plumes of vapor from the earth. This is the legendary place the Greeks named the Burning Fields, which gave birth to some of the ancient world's most powerful legends and myths. The undeniable magnetism of this hot zone can still be felt today, as the Phlegraean Fields remain one of the most mystical and mysterious places where man lives in the shadow of volcanoes.